All right, it is Thanksgiving week. Welcome our annual podcast with an in-person guest. We're going to talk Turkey Day. Going to talk the league. Two beards, one laptop. Mr. Jacobs, how are you today?
Great. They say that the Masters is a tradition like none other, but I really think that this is the tradition that gets everybody excited. Our annual in-person chat, previewing the Thanksgiving Day matchups and the final 2 weeks of our regular season.
Yeah. If you happen to be viewing, you're welcome to call in or chat your questions. We'll certainly answer them. We actually got games that matter. I feel like last year, not a lot of games of importance. This year, we've got a bunch of playoff implications in fantasy and real football. Your team's not in the hunt for the NFL playoffs. It is in the hunt for the fantasy playoffs. How does that make you feel, Mr. Jet?
Great. I'm thrilled. I don't know the pleasure of real world playoffs, so it's a pleasure to have that in the world of fantasy. And I'll say it's nice to have that seat wrapped up with 4 weeks to go, and now with 2 weeks ago, just to be debating whether or not I'm going to have this first round bye. It's also nice, I'm coming off back-to-back seasons in the championship game. Mm-hmm. I have a chance to go for 3 in a row. If I could win, arguably the best 3-season stretch in league history. Would be quite exciting.
I'm sure Mr. Richmond would have something to say about best 3-season stretch in league history. He's definitely won.
He had two
championships in a 3-year period before,
but he did not come in second in that middle year. I believe he came in third. So that's my opportunity.
I see. So should we basically call you the Chiefs if you're talking like you're just going to be in the Super Bowl every year?
I might be the true roller with Mahomes when all is said and done here.
Yeah, well, that's a great segue because you're doing what's, I think, a pretty fun trend here of you just change your name every week to basically the team you're playing. You are rolling with Mahomes this week. You're probably going to steamroll.
That is the hope. I certainly looked last week like I was going to fumble a very easy matchup with yet another kind of dud of performance from Taylor there, who does have a very difficult schedule to end the season. I think we can acknowledge that. A terrible game from Allen coming back down to earth. So I was not thrilled to see that, but it was nice to have to come out on top there against, I think I was playing Justin last week. But yeah, this matchup against Wagner, I'm really not too worried about as long as these guys can kind of come back to form a little bit. And I think, as has been said in the chat, barring a real fumbling of this end of season schedule, I should seal the deal with getting a first round bye here.
Well, it's certainly a Paul win over La Magna this week, and if you take care of business, that'll do it. You will have secured a first round bye. I think, frankly, you don't even need to win, but probably the win probably helps. It's I won't say cakewalk because nothing's guaranteed, but if Judkins plays like he did last week, and Josh Allen should be in a pretty high scoring game again at Pittsburgh, because the Bills can't stop anybody. That defense doesn't. Is pretty pathetic right now, and I agree with you. Jonathan Taylor's end of season schedule would be a concern, but you've got Judkins, so I think it kind of washes out. I don't see a way Taylor gets to his projection.
Right.
On the other side,
the problem is there's no threats to me on West.
I mean, yeah, Brock Purdy probably not throwing 3 picks, but he is at Cleveland, so there's no gimmies there. But it's not a team that scares you.
No.
When you're facing a team with only one player projected in double digits, you should feel pretty good about your chances. You're basically a 30-point projected favorite. Yeah, I think you're probably going to lock in a bye. The real question then, can you catch Mr. Tates for that number 1 seed? Because I think that's what.
And I ultimately think that's out of my control, right? I have to win, obviously. That has to happen. He's got a game on me, but it's really, I think the odds are, again, knock wood, I should win these matchups. It's really going to come down to these final 2 games that Eric has to play and whether or not he can pull them out.
Yeah, I mean, look, Eric's in. I don't know if it's basically as hard of a division as the other one, but he's 10-2. He's found a way to win all these games. He's won 4 in a row. Part of that's of course going to be schedule luck, and part of it's going to be shrewd ownership. And for him, he already beat Manny, so now comes the real test, right? You've got to beat 2 quality teams. Bodson is 8-4, so there's still certainly an outside chance for Bodson to win the division. It would take a lot of help. It would take quite the turn of events. But you really only need Eric to lose one, and if you take care of business and you score enough points,
right.
And he's got a much more difficult schedule. Bodson and Richmond, those are two really hard teams, at least in terms of paper and expectation. So I wouldn't say that you don't have a chance anymore. Well,
I think that the talking about Eric's team, I did make a couple predictions to myself that we could talk about on today's pod, and I think Eric, obviously, I do think he's going to win that. One of the Erics will win that division, but I definitely think it's going to be Mr. Rasheed. I think that his issue is his backfield situation. And I think that's the biggest thing that's really going to prevent him from winning this league. Gibbs is great. I don't think you can count on these types of performances going into the end of the season from him. And I think, he's got Saquon in this other spot. I forget about injuries. He's just not performing to the degree you want to feel comfortable with as an RB2. And I think he's only carrying one other running back on the bench, if I remember correctly. And so it's a real, there's certainly a high ceiling, but I think it's got a really, really, really soft floor that he's got to worry about.
Yeah. It's a team that I think this owner thinks his team is better on paper than it is. And certainly the running back depth is a concern. I mean, but if Jahmyr Gibbs is going to go for 54 points, it doesn't really matter. And Jalen Hurts is going to go for 30. I mean, that goes a long way. But this owner thinks he's, very, very much set at receiver. CeeDee Lamb, obviously there's a lot of talent there, a lot of potential. But he hasn't always done it this year. For whatever reason, George Pickens has played really well. Rashee Rice, I mean, he's been very good production-wise from a fantasy perspective. But it's the Chiefs. And they're not looking that great on offense. So I don't know if that's sustainable. And then if you got Waddle, London's hurt. I just feel like I get his approach of I'm going to stand pat and rely on what I have. I don't know that the full ceiling is there. You look at the Atlanta quarterback situation. I don't love, kind of the Drake London reliance.
Right.
Again, I think Lamb has been a little too much boom or bust this year, and we'll see. But again, you have almost a cheat card in Gibbs. If Gibbs is going to he can do that any week. The fact that he did that and is not the number one running back in fantasy this year is kind of, I think, amazing and shocking.
Well, partially because Jonathan Taylor had his own game.
Right. But I mean, 54 points. That's 2 or 3 games together. So this is a good team. I just don't know that its ceiling is quite what the owner thinks.
Well, I will tell you, this owner, he was not trying to rest on his laurels. He and I were actually not that far apart from executing a Jonathan Taylor trade.
Really?
Going into the last week of before the trade deadline, I was very willing to put that piece in play because of how insecure I feel about my wide receiver situation. And also just seeing, especially at running back, if I could make a play of, downgrading Taylor for one of the other opportunity, like a Gibbs or someone else who Eric had, or maybe an improvement at wide receiver, I wasn't necessarily against it. Ultimately could not get to yes together on it, but it was his proposal. It was very audacious. We were having the dialogue. We just couldn't get there.
Was Gibbs on the table?
No, the proposal to me, if I remember correctly, was Waddle and a 2nd-round pick
for Taylor.
Oh, and he may have thrown in Barkley. It may have been Waddle, Barkley, and a 2nd-round pick for Taylor. Which it's a great opening offer for someone to make. Obviously, they want to come out on top with it. It's fair. And I kind of went back to him and said I would need at least one of those pieces to be an improvement, which is not against Waddle because I do like him, but I think to trade for someone of Taylor's caliber, it would have to have been a little bit more of a reliable wide receiver, in my opinion, than Jalen Waddle.
I completely understand that. I mean, Jonathan Taylor has had
4 games over 30 points, I think.
5 games over 30. I mean, 6 if we want to go to 28.5.
Yeah.
And that's at half point PPR scoring. So, I mean, if you look at it, he's basically more times than not gone north of 28 points, or certainly north of 20 points on the season. So there's some bad weeks in there, 6 points, 7 points. That's not going to help you out. And you're right about, I think, being concerned about that schedule. Houston, a pretty good defense against running backs. Yeah. Jacksonville does a good job against running backs. Seattle does a good job. The Niners, they're average, but out of the next 5 weeks, 4 are
against pretty good
run defenses, pretty good defenses against running backs. That would be a concern. And to have the chance to kind of punt and make that someone else's problem. Woo! Granted, you got to take on Saquon Barkley, and that
right.
That
was ultimately it's a better floor in my opinion for Taylor than it is for Barkley. And the hope is, given the situation I was in, arguably I only have to worry about 2 of those shitty matchups, and one of them is not as bad as the other. And the hope would be the second time he goes against Jacksonville, it's at home, and maybe he feels a little bit more familiar with the defense and he's ready to take it on. So who knows?
I think for you, it's even more simple than that, because if you were to look at that, if we just take that, he's got the next 5 games, they're all difficult opponents, but you're already going to be in the playoffs at 9-3. You're most likely going to have a first round bye. So you don't really care about these next 2, and exactly. You probably avoid the third. And so then you get the Niners in the semifinals, which, certainly Monday Night Football. Mm-hmm. So that could be a very interesting game where you might be sitting there on Monday Night Football needing a big Taylor performance, which he could do. And then the championship where it's Jacksonville for the second time in 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, at that point, you're really only looking at Taylor on a 2-week sample size versus 4 or 5. I don't know. I had not thought about that, but that changes my analysis. Mm-hmm. I think you look at that and go, okay, I'll roll those dice and see what happens. Because, again, I think you're going to be in a situation where these next 3 weeks, you're probably not playing one of them, and the other 2, given who you've got to play.
Right.
I'm not worried about the ass mongler strikes back, the interns, or, Sisyphus,
Have we gotten a story on how that became Mr. Sullivan's name? Did he just smash the keyboard and that was the decision there? Because he's run with it.
Well, so here's the thing, though, is I think it's just his default name, because the owner name is whatever you have designated when you
make your account.
Right. And so that was probably like an email address, or I don't know, maybe that's one of those things that goes back to like instant messenger days. I don't know. Not changing the team name all season is an interesting move, choice. Right? Interesting choice. But okay. He's one of 2 owners or 3 owners, I guess, all season to not change their name. Mm-hmm. So basically everybody else has. So okay, we'll see if we get a backstory, but that's my guess, right? If you just sort of,
that makes sense. One thing I did want to talk about today was
let's break it down.
We've talked about trades a lot this season, and as one of the most active trade participants, I have not had a chance to. There we go. Okay, now we know.
There we go. Well,
first of all, thank you for watching. We really appreciate the viewership. Is the trade market, and I would love to discuss that because I was such an active player. I believe I was the first mover in it as well. And what I want to say, so I think I don't remember the first trade I pulled off. Was it the Jonathan Taylor one? Can we check that?
We can do that. We're going to have to
really go back here.
Well, oh boy. And now team names are complicated. So there we go. In terms of this season, the first trade that you did.
Wow, I really did do a lot. Yeah, it was the Jonathan Taylor trade first off.
That would be the trade. So you traded Jaylen Warren and a first-round pick for Jonathan Taylor, which it's pretty equal, pretty even, and assuming you win the league, you're definitely not going to be upset about it, right?
No, and that was 100%. I don't think there's a fairer price to have been paid with who was on my roster at that time and what you could reasonably expect from the Steelers' backfield. Because Gainwell was getting I don't know what the stat was, but Gainwell was getting pretty good usage, especially early on. And Warren, as much as I've always been buying that stock, when I could convert him into someone much more reliable like Taylor, I'm absolutely going to take that opportunity. And the reason I did that so early is, quite frankly, I was terrified of how quickly Paul was going to move. Because Paul is always a quick mover on the trade market. He wants the action to happen. And I was terrified that he was going to set a market price that was going to drive the rest of the league crazy. And the way I've looked at this season is that there's still a lot up in the air about what next year is going to look like for this league. This is my last chance to make a title run. So I'm going to throw everything at it.
Yeah,
the way I consider it.
I think that here's one way to look at this trade. Jonathan Taylor's production this year is the equivalency of Jalen Warren and Derrick Henry together. It's pretty incredible when you just think about that. If we're talking about the number 11 and number 20 fantasy running backs have to be put together to get you Jonathan Taylor. I mean, I think that's fairly remarkable. In terms of a trade, obviously the value has worked out great for you. And I understand. I think the approach of, look, it's as the format's going to radically change, nobody knows that's going to look like. And the first probably 2 years are going to be very unpredictable as people kind of get their feet under them. And so if you want a championship and you feel like you're in the position to chase it, go for it, because now is the time where you know for sure you can control. And I think next year, if there is no draft pick trading, I think trades are going to be very difficult to come by because people in this league, I think, are so used to trading assets or picks, or associated with it. And then making a football-only trade is not impossible, but it is much more difficult to pull off. And we've seen those not necessarily work out for anyone this year. But yeah, I think you have the right mentality of, I've got a shot, let's go for it and see what happens. Because worst case, next year's kind of a dead year. But you know what? You and another 4 people don't have any first picks in picks in the first 4 rounds. So
and I think even the concept of a dead year, right? When I won 2 years ago, I traded a couple early picks away for that. And I anticipated that last season was going to be dead. But then I was in a soft division. I had a couple pieces to make a move. I did. And what happened? I'm in the championship with you again. This season, arguably a very similar situation. I had to make some trades. I think I gave up 1 or 2 early round picks to make it happen. I made that Josh Allen move in the offseason. And now here I find myself again, definitely going to playoffs. Maybe a good sequence of events leads me to the final. And so I think we as a league have overvalued picks because in theory, they sound so much better than they are. But let's look at it like, yes, this year, Paul has used 3 first-round picks to build an incredible team. And even if we take Paul's previous season of 3 first-round picks out as an outlier, like just because you've had a lot of early-round picks, I don't have the stats on it, and maybe this is something LeMagner or I pulled together in the offseason, has not necessarily been a precursor to championship success.
Agreed. And I think also because it's a keeper league, it distorts value of that. The further you get away from the top of the draft, the less valuable the pick is. So the idea of like throwing in a 7th round pick or 6th round pick isn't really that valuable in a trade because I'm basically looking at, okay, so I'm talking like an end of bench, like a top bench type player, a flex option if I'm lucky. Right. Most likely you're talking like a bench type guy or, a guy you really aren't going to love, but you're sort of taking them for value, or you're hunting for, okay, I got to be the first mover on, I got to be the first mover before the next wave of like tight ends or something. You're trying to like
or the backup quarterbacks.
Right. You're like jumping to try to fit, you're putting a round peg in a square hole. And that's why when like trading for me, when someone's like, they try, Paul loves this. I'll throw in like you give him a 2nd round pick, he'll throw in like a 5th. And I go, the 5th round pick is not that, like, there's no real addition of value here. Like, what are we talking about? And not to say that it doesn't hold some weight, but it doesn't make a significant difference to how I evaluate that deal, right? Because I'm giving up way more value than what you're giving from an asset perspective. So I agree. I think it distorts things, but I looked at my season and said, look, I thought I started out better than I thought I would in terms of winning some games. And I kind of tried to chase that, went all in a little bit, tried to, acquire Lamar and Chase, and knowing that I don't have to upgrade that many positions to be good enough to potentially be in the playoffs and make some noise. Obviously, it hasn't worked out. I'm probably not going to be in the playoffs. And so I've mortgaged next year for no reason. But on the flip side of that coin, if it does benefit me and I do happen to pull off one or two of these upsets, I beat Manny an hour or something, I'm like squeezing my way into the playoffs, I'm a dangerous team. You don't know what happens. Right. So, I'd rather look, this is for fun, right? I'd rather go for it, try to win, have a good time than, I don't know, just sort of throw my hands in the air and just sort of, ride it out without making any changes. And I think with Dynasty, as we make that move, there's so many more strategies that can come into play and so many more short and long-term approaches that you can take that I mean, you can punt on a year, and you certainly can, but I think you have to think more. You really have to juggle that. Is this a short-term approach or a long-term approach? It's not like now where you're just going to have a whole draft and you can turn it around in 1 year. That may not be possible. So
No,
I do think it's going to take a year or two for people to really start to really understand, how one move can have those ripple effects.
Right.
But
you're not mortgaging 1 year.
I mean, you can, right? You can sacrifice in a dynasty. You can sacrifice those draft picks, right?
Right.
But
that's mortgaging more than just one season for you because that's future talent.
But it's like what matters, right?
Yeah.
What matters? How is my team constructed now? Is my team a bunch of veterans, or my window is 2 or 3 years, or is my team a bunch of young players, or is it a mix? Most teams are going to be a mix, but somebody might go into the approach and say, "I'm going to build for the next 5 to 10 years," right? And just sort of know that they're not going to be super competitive in the first 2 or 3 years of the league, but they're building out for the future. Right? Those are completely. There's so many different things you can do, and your roster is so large. But I don't know that people will understand right away of, hey, if you go trade a first-round pick in a dynasty draft, like you could be trading away the next Joe Burrow, right? Like, you don't know that, but that is on the table, right? The next Adrian Peterson, like you don't know those things, but those things that's unfortunately how that happens, right? So I'm curious to see how that plays out, but yeah, I'm sure you had other thoughts about trades.
The other thing I want to say about this, I actually stand by every trade I made. I'm really happy with how all of them panned out, even the ones that were later riddled with injury, like the Bucky Irving trade, because that brought me Jake Ferguson, who gave me some incredible performances, while the wide receiver situation was in flux in Dallas. I think I made some moves earlier than I should have because I was ready to go for this season. And what I regretted is that when I got closer to the trade deadline, I didn't have as many pieces to put in play as I wanted when more teams were ready to punt. By which I mean, you and I were talking about trading for Chase at one point,
right?
But the best thing I could offer is a 4th-round pick, which is not that sexy.
It's not, and that's less than 25 cents on the dollar, right? That's you're really not giving up much, and not that we couldn't have tried to figure out something there, but at that point, it's like I'm batting away. What I find to be offensive offers from Paul of I don't know. I mean, it's like Chase and a 5th-round pick for like AJ Brown and a 3rd. And I'm like, even if I sit here and think they will force the ball to AJ Brown, like, why am I giving up a pick?
Right.
Like, what are we doing? And now is Burrow set to come back tomorrow? It looks like Chase vaults right to the top of players that I would want on my team. And he shouldn't have spit, and maybe that would have made a difference last week. Who knows? But all of those things can matter. And I told myself after making these deals earlier in the year if I had got to the point where I needed to try to punt, I wasn't going to take like half value. I was going to at least say, if I can get something that at least feels like gives me something usable, I'll consider it. But I'm not just going to make a deal because I have to, or I feel like I need to. So, I think that's part of the difficulty sometimes. It's been fun. I think there's been a lot of activity in the trades. I'm very excited for the fact that next year, so many teams do not have top picks, right? There's not an easy way to look at this, but obviously it's it's your team. It's not so much Matt, Paul, myself, Eric, just as a general baseline, just to give you an idea, right? You don't have any picks in the first 5 rounds.
Yep.
Paul doesn't have any. He doesn't have a 1st, a 2nd, or a 4th. Then he's got a whole bunch of 5th, 6th, 9th. I mean, I don't know. Paul's strategy is whatever. I think it'll be hilarious to watch him be like perfectly just average next year. Who am I looking at here? I don't have a 1st or 2nd. I don't have a 5th, right? I've got a weird hodgepodge, and I'm going to have a bunch of random picks at the end of the draft. It's not terrible, absolutely terrible, but it's not great. Tate's has Eric has no picks in the first 4 rounds, so we've got guys with no picks in the first 5 rounds, no picks in the first 4 rounds. Paul, which is basically all mid-round picks.
I mean, I'm counting on.
I've got fun,
and I'm counting on. I've got great talent I can't keep, and maybe somebody's going to want to trade for one of them and help me get back into.
That's how I look at it. That's how I look at it, right? Does somebody look at me and go, "Hey, Nico Collins is a 6th-round keeper next year,"
right?
If you're somebody who has like 3 first-round picks, why wouldn't you throw me like an 8th and 9th and a 10th round pick to get Nico.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Like I'd be fine to do that deal. Right. Because I'm going to be bad anyway. I might as well try to get more value out of it. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because there's so many teams that are basically starting 1 or 2 feet behind everyone else. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be something.
Yeah, and as shitty as my team is, I do have the possibility of at least keeping some good guys around, or guys I could trade. You know, Brian Thomas, who I got from you, he's an 8th round keeper. Judkins is an 8th round keeper.
Right.
Like, even with that, I'll still have a couple of good pieces that I can hang on to if I want to, which is great. We have a future trade happening right now?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, this is where business gets done. You know, we have a viewer who's interested in what I just threw out there, right? I mean, I think that is something that's you have to consider, right? Like if you have a player who, look, we got 1 more year of the keeper season. So if you're somebody who, you know, again, for all intents and purposes, if you just look at this and we take like a Zach team, right? Or you take like a Justin's team, those are really good examples. Zach has 2 firsts, 3 seconds, 2 thirds, 2 fourths. Okay. His entire starting lineup is in the first 4 rounds, plus any keepers he wants. Now, he doesn't have a 6th round pick right now. Not that he can't go acquire that. That's pretty easy to acquire, right? But he's got 2 7s, right? I mean, he's going to be done picking by like round 10, you know, at this rate. And he's got so many high picks. Same kind of situation for Justin. Justin's got 2 1s, 2 2s, 3 4s, right? Again, that's somebody who's going to have essentially their whole team done in the first 4 or 5 rounds. Those are 2 teams I look at and go, those are teams that should be looking at, okay, I don't have maybe great keepers on my team. Who has 3 or 4 guys, and I can go pick 1 or even 2 and set myself up to have quality already going into the draft, and then still being able to collect all that more like the top talent.
And quite frankly, get them at a bargain.
Right.
Because I'm getting something that I was not going to have anyway.
100%. If you have no picks in the first 5 rounds, if you get an extra 6th round pick or something, you're going to be happy.
Yeah. Because
no one's going to give you a 1 or a 2, right? Like that's not going to happen. But you get what you can, and you make the best of it. I'm also excited because you're going to have – there's such a sort of haves and have-nots going into the draft, and we know not all the haves are going to work out because we know how fantasy works. But I'm excited to see kind of that play out.
Yeah.
Right. We walk out of the draft and go, man, there's 3 or 4 terrible teams, and there are 2 or 3 juggernauts. And what, you know, with not having draft pick trades, what happens? People in this league, some people are just addicts like you and I. We have to make trades. We have to make moves. I'm really excited to see how that all plays out, because there will be people who have had multiple first-round picks before who have not done well with those, and they're going to be given another chance. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see the train wrecks that come from some of this. You know, that's what makes fantasy special, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now I have one. So I have some other predictions that I've written down.
Get into them.
You know, we've talked about, I do think Paul definitely wins that division. And I don't think that's a stretch for many reasons to say.
You do think Paul is able to beat out
LaMagna and win the Tombs division? I think it's just hard to see a way that doesn't happen. He
has to win out because he's a game back.
Right. He has to win out, but I think it's hard to see a world again with this lineup and some of the matchups that his guys have in the last 2 weeks. It's hard to see a way. Obviously possible. It's hard to see a way from it doesn't happen.
You know, I would agree with you, except you are banking on the fact that I'm going to beat Matt.
True.
And not that I can't, right? 100% my team is capable. I don't know. I don't feel that confident, right? The way that I've lost 2 in a row, and, you know, I think my team should be playing better than it has been. You know, Paul's team, I mean, just the projections on what you think going into the week. I mean, if you're talking 130, 140, it's crazy numbers. So, yes, should Paul win this division? Sure. He also shouldn't be 7-5, 12 weeks in. He probably ought to be 9-3.
Yeah, this is not a position he should be in at all.
You know, if you're going to average almost 127 points a week, which is probably getting close, probably going to end up as like a league record, given how well he scored. And yes, he's faced a very hard schedule, but it's softened up lately.
Right.
You know, yeah, I mean, he's had bad luck, but man, there's really no reason he doesn't have 9 wins.
Right.
And we're talking about Paul
with the first round
as a first round bye. Yeah. I mean, that to me, I think is a story is he starts out the year 1-2. He's 500 basically all season. He's finally clawed a little bit above it. He's only 2-2 in division. It's not like he's been impressive. I don't think Paul wins the division. And I think that this is kind of the crazy part of this. So if Paul doesn't win the division, he's in the 4-5. And for you, if you finish as a 2 seed and Paul doesn't win his division,
I would be very happy.
You are in the best position because
exactly.
This is what I was talking the other week about on here was if you can avoid Paul until the finals. That is the optimum scenario. Because if you are in the situation where you have to play Paul and then Eric, the championship gets exponentially harder. So if you are, let's say you're Bodson, right? Not a bad team. But remember, he's traded away Amon-Ra to Paul, right? Yeah, he's got Achan, but he's sitting there. He gave Paul one of Paul's best weapons. And, not that it's a bad team, but those are just not equal teams.
No.
You got a situation where you probably you'd have to play like Paul, Eric, and then you. Like that's a really hard, right? I mean, you look at those, and I think that's why if you look at like you look at these league analyzers, right?
I think I'm now down to number 3, but it's like a percentage point difference between me and Paul.
Well, yeah, I think if you go to Fantasy Pros and you do some of that, I mean, what I always look at is interesting. Yeah, if you look at projected standings, right? Essentially, it basically gives Joe a 50% chance to get in. The 5 teams above Joe in the standings right now. So that's Paul, Bodson, Matt, yourself, and Tights. They're all, it says 100%. I mean, you've already clinched. You're in. You're not going anywhere, basically. And then in terms of championship odds, I mean, basically it still thinks it's, you, Paul, Eric, all relatively equal fight. But it still kind of gives an outside chance to Manny, Drew, and myself because we have not been eliminated yet to make the playoffs. I don't think like looking at projected standings is necessarily super helpful, other than the fact that it does not think Paul's going to catch Matt. Power rankings to me is much more interesting because this is the part that's frustrating for me, sitting where I am, 2 games below 500, because I'm now the 4th highest power rated team, but I'm like 9th in the standings, right? Or at least 7th if you want to just be generous with the tiebreakers. And so for you, it thinks you're worse than I am.
Right.
Not that I think this is not the end all be all, right? Of
no,
how to look at
there
this.
Are points where I was number 2 and now I'm down here.
It fluctuates, right? Injuries and trades, it does think Paul's a cut above, I would say. But it makes it clear, I think, regardless, that if you end up on the side of a bracket, if Paul and Eric are on the same side of the bracket, if you can not manipulate it, but if that's just naturally how it falls, even if you win out and Eric wins out, right? Or Eric, you can't pass him on points, which is very close, right? It's still, it's doable. I mean, that to me is what I'm most curious of looking at the playoffs is if I'm not going to sneak in myself or my own team, I think how the bracket falls is going to be very interesting because if Paul doesn't win a division, I don't think he does because I don't trust my team. And Matt's team is good enough to beat me. God, I mean, if Paul is in that 4-5, oh boy, that's kind of that ideal scenario for the other half of the bracket. And I think that's where you're going to end up because I think Eric is probably going to win these last 2. Frankly, I think there's a gap between him and the rest of his division. That's personal assessment, but
no, I think for myself and for at least for me, my ideal situation is a win this week. Paul beats LaMagna and Tights loses, and then
everything's to play for.
Everything is to play for next weekend because I think the hardest possible situation is it feels kind of clear. Paul. Well, no, because if Paul loses, he is pretty much guaranteed to lose that division because he's playing LaMagna this week, so he won't be able to catch him. Yeah. So actually, it might be better off for me if Paul loses this week because then both Tights and I will be able to look at it and go.
If Paul loses this week, Paul essentially, I mean,
he's going to be 4th.
Not that. No, I mean, Paul. That's just the problem.
Yeah.
If Paul loses this week and he goes to 7-6, Manny either. Well, not Manny or I. Paul's playing Manny this week. Sorry, playing Drew. No, sorry, I'm playing Drew. I'm playing
Paul's playing
Mac. So like Drew or I are going to be 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Paul's going to be 7 and 6. Now, Paul's not going to, unlikely because of points. There's probably no way for us to catch him. But I think the bigger question there is like for Paul could technically end up, he could still fall as low as 6. I don't think he's out. He's not going to really probably not drop out of the playoffs. He hasn't clinched it, but it's mathematically so unlikely.
Right.
I don't think Paul's going to fall to 6 either because he's again the points make it so hard for him. He'd have to lose out and essentially and have Joe win out. It just doesn't feel like you need both those things to happen. Probably unlikely, because again Paul gets Drew next week, so the odds are that Paul will win next week. So I think Paul is probably locked into that 5 because he needs help. He needs Bodson to lose,
right,
or he needs LaMagna to lose, right? So Paul needs help to get out of the 5. I think Paul is probably stuck in the 4-5 unless he gets a lot of help. But I'm personally a fan of let's get into next week and have everything to play for. And let's make it a lot of fun and have Eric lose this week and you lose and Paul wins. And now we've got 4 or 5 teams fighting for divisions. Like that would be fantastic. It's probably not how it plays out. I haven't looked at all the matchups this week. We certainly can, just for example, Eric plays Bodson. I mean, that's probably going to go Eric's way, but
right. Well, he's not even fully set his lineup yet.
Right, exactly. Bodson, if we look at it, he's got Josh Jacobs going to play tomorrow. He needs a kicker. I mean, look, the Dolphins are playing the Saints, so you could have some huge scores on the Bodson team. But for Eric, he's got Gibson Thanksgiving at home should be good.
Right.
Hurts against the Bears should be good. Eric's got a lot of Thursday players. I mean, we're gonna
have a good idea tomorrow.
Oh boy, yeah. Eric's got Friday and Thursday. We're gonna get to the weekend and we're gonna know whether or not Eric has any chance at all to win this matchup because
he's got left after lead. Brock Bowers. Oh no, and
Waddle. I mean, if you get to the weekend and Eric's not at 90 points, game on, right? I personally, because Bodson's got plenty of Sunday, Monday. Not that again, the odds favor Eric so much here. It's a 20-point spread, like it. But let's just assume Eric wins, right? Let's assume form holds. Eric wins. Let's assume, I think the biggest one for you is the Matt Paul.
Yep, absolutely.
Because you need Matt to win. Matt wins, he locks up the division. Paul wins. Paul moves up into 3rd. And then that becomes precarious for your path.
But it also means Paul could end up anywhere still. He could still end up 3rd or in that 4-5 game.
Yeah, I don't think he ends up in 6. Paul's looking at 3, 4, 5. He's not going to get a bye. I guess technically it's possible. You'd have to lose out. He'd have to win out. Odds of that are low. But, I mean, this is the matchup that matters, right, for you. I mean, obviously Paul has the better players and has probably, has some good matchups. But Niners on the road at the Browns, that's not easy. The Falcons at the Jets, that's not going to be easy. Mahomes has not inspired a ton of confidence lately, and the Cowboys defense has played better. So who the hell knows what we're getting tomorrow afternoon? Obviously, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra could both, JSN could all go off. I mean, those are probably very good matchups for Paul. But I don't love his running back matchups this week. I don't love the tight end matchup. I don't love the quarterback matchup. The Ravens defense is hot garbage, and they're getting Burrow. Paul didn't want to make a defense trade at the deadline.
And I will say, I tried to trade kickers with Paul just because he said it would never be done.
I tried to trade defense. Yeah. Here's Seattle. Do you want to talk about trades? I tried to offer him Seattle. He goes, I was like, give me the Chargers. I said, give me the Chargers defense. I want
which, thank you. I picked him up this week.
But he wouldn't trade him. Then he dropped. I said, I want a competent defense. And he was trying to make me take Baltimore. I'm like, why would I take the Baltimore Ravens defense that can't stop anybody?
No.
What are we doing? Of course, Seattle, number 1 defense, offering it to you. You know what? Again, trading takes 2. You have to make compromises. You can't always win in an outright way. And I think that holds up a lot of those types of trades. But anyway, on the other side, right, like Matt's defense has got a really tough matchup. Tight end's probably going to do well. His receivers, I don't know about Pittman, but Devontae Adams has been phenomenally. Egbuka, I mean, Tampa looked terrible, and if Baker's hurt, I don't know.
Latest on Mayfield.
They said minor sprain, question mark, TBD. I don't know. I don't know if he plays. They have to win that division because I don't know that you get in as a wild. I mean, the Panthers did lose Monday night, so the Panthers are 2 games out of the division, but Tampa's going to be the division winner. It's just, I don't know. You have to prioritize Mayfield's health at this point. I don't know if he plays at home against Arizona. So I don't know what that does for Igbokwe. I would expect James Cook to have a good game. I would think Pittsburgh, high scoring. Stafford, they should put up points. How much he has to throw, I don't know, but they should put up points against Carolina. Although Carolina at home has been decent. And Javonte Williams, obviously the Chiefs are good defense tomorrow. I don't know. I mean, obviously everything says favor Paul. But that's the matchup for you, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Paul versus Matt, huge spread, but
now and let's say here's one thought for you. Based on Paul's team. I think Algier will be the running back you wish you had from Atlanta for the rest of the season.
I mean, your words,
more than
the
Robinson.
God's ear. Like the number of times I have tried to get Paul to take him, and the response that I get is, I don't need him. I don't want him. I would drop him anyway. And I go, that is an outright lie. Now, yes, I understand that, if you're going to tell me that you would keep on your roster, let's just say right now, Emmanuel Wilson over the backup to Bijan Robinson, you are smoking crack, and I would like some. Like, what is in your pipe?
And I will also say in rostering 3 defenses, which is just not
that's the thing. And we went through this with Paul last year when he was in the consolation bracket, and his defense had dropped shenanigans. Like, I understand matchups matter. I understand the importance. I would not be playing the Baltimore Ravens at home on Thanksgiving night against a Joe Burrow coming back with a fresh Jamar Chase.
Right.
That game has unpredictability written all over it. It has 2 terrible defenses. Baltimore, who has to win because they have to win that division because they are not very good. And Pittsburgh, I mean, that they're going to be in a dogfight with the Steelers for that. And the Bengals are not good, but Burrow is going to be back. That's probably going to be a high-scoring game.
And also playing a matchup is only so smart because you are not controlling anything that happens in that game. Like, forget about we have no control to begin with, but the amount of assumptions.
Speak for yourself. As an NFL owner,
as a shareholder,
I exercise much control. No, I agree with you, right?
It's too cute.
I would rather play the Colts defense at home against the Davis Mills Texans, or probably the Davis Mills Texans, than I would Baltimore on Thanksgiving. Like, I don't really love any of these defenses. I think the Colts are starting to trend down, but they're still very good. Their schedule is easy. They are at home. I would probably play the Colts. I forget projections. I think just looking at it from
who I'm going up against,
right,
100%.
You're starting the number 24 fantasy defense. You also roster the number 20 fantasy defense.
Right.
What does that tell me? That the defense doesn't generate a ton of turnovers and a ton of stops, because our scoring is based on getting off the field, and generating negative plays.
Right.
Baltimore's not doing that.
Right.
They're in a dogfight with Carolina 2 weeks ago. What are we doing? But again, this is the kind of decision that for Paul, I get it probably doesn't matter because you've got the number 1 receiver, the number 2 kicker, you got the number 3 receiver, the number 5 running back, the number 2 running back, the number 3 quarterback. It probably doesn't matter. But
and this is why I will say if Paul does not win the league, it's because of Paul. It is not going to be because of any player on this team. It's going to be because of a management choice.
Of course it is. It's the refusal to. It's either the refusal to trade and upgrade and just become like a true juggernaut, or it's getting cute with your lineup decisions.
Which I also feel it's important to say. We'll say all of this. This league is 10% as fun as it is without Paul in it. Like he is critical to the success.
100%. I mean, it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's just like Paul the other night at the Caps game. I don't know if you saw this.
That killed me.
Where he only took 3 or 4 pies to the face. I mean, look, we all step on rakes from time to time, some more than others, and being able to watch another owner step on a rake time after time, that's part of the fun of fantasy football.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, look, at the beginning of the year, I said I thought Paul would win it. He certainly has done nothing to show me his team can't. But yes, do I have those same concerns? Of course. You have to pull the right levers. And you would think it's foolproof, but the kind of thing that's going to derail you is starting the number 24 defense in a week that you have to win. Not that he has to win this week. He's likely going to be in the playoffs no matter what because he has so many points scored over every other team that he could be in a tie with. But, oh, boy.
Yeah.
There's no second chances. There's no, 9 lives, right? All of that ends in the playoff.
Right.
And, for as good as his team icon is, and, if Lamagna won this matchup, I would not be surprised.
No,
I would. It would certainly be an upset, but it's just, that's how it goes. That's how it goes. And for you, that's what you want, right?
100%.
No guarantees. No guarantees, though. I will say that. I think, gun to your head right now. Who do you truly think is in the final?
I think it's me and Paul.
Probably agree with you because I don't think the other teams that you may see in your side of the bracket, they've decided not to make changes, which I disagreed with at the time. And I think Paul and Eric are going to meet in the semis. And I think that's the key.
I think the reason it's hard to predict is it's all going to be about what the seeding looks like. And I think it's rare that you say that is the true factor. But I think it's going to be the seeding. I think it's going to shake out that it's me and Paul. And it could go a lot. But if it's not, I also would not be surprised because Eric's team is is great. It's got its weaknesses, don't get me wrong, but that is a team that, again, in any other league should be in the finals of the championship this year.
Yeah, but look at real life football. How many times do you see the AFC championship, the NFC championship? You really feel like in college football, right? You might look and say that conference or that semifinal game. That's really where the champion's coming from.
Right.
That happens all the time in sports. It's no different than in basketball or baseball. We feel that way. It doesn't always play out that way, but we feel that way. We think about it in basketball. Well, if that's the real, matchup,
the real Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, right? So I'm with you.
Well, and I'll say this: I know I have to start heading out because it's now 9:50 on the West Coast, so people are actually waking up to do work. But
they keep it bankers hours if they're just now waking up.
That's what we do. So. But I do have one announcement. Of league business before I get off the phone, which is that the power rankings in their current iteration will be sunset after next season. So we are in the final 2 years. After the initial 2 years of the power rankings as they stand. But it does feel appropriate that as we switch to a dynasty model, we sunset the rankings model we have, and we will shepherd in a new one. It will also allow us, a good reset. We've got a new manager coming into the league. We've also had several managers who are in these rankings who do not have as much history as some of our other managers who've been here from the beginning. What shape and form this will take, TBD. As I have to see how the rules for Dynasty shake out, of course. And then I do imagine we'll have some sort of a depreciation model for the existing rankings, kind of like we see in tennis and golf, right? You lose some points based on performance year to year. That will mean Joe Richmond will start on top, but will slowly fall away. But I think
we'll see if he falls away.
Yeah, we'll see if he falls away. But it feels appropriate. So we'll have 2 more years to check these out. We'll crown the power rankings champion of the initial decade plus of this league, and then welcome a new chapter.
Well, I look forward to that. That's certainly exciting. I think it's important to sunset them or to start. Those kind of can depreciate over time. I think that's important. That's how most of the predictive models, right? You have your prior season or your off-season type rankings mean less and less in predictive models as the season goes on. I think it's no different. So, look forward to that. I'm always interested to see what every team's current ELO rating is, right? Based on your postseason analysis.
Oh, it'll be
a lot of fun. So I appreciate it. This is always a highlight of the year in person, and for our one viewer who's no longer here, thank you for your time. For anyone who catches it later on, we appreciate it as well. Thank you.